Oh, hello. Thanks for joining in. How is everyone today? I'm hoping to share some audio video footage of reporter Yamiche asking President Trump some difficult questions and being attacked in return. So to me, it's really important to help facilitate the spread of good information and therefore undercut all of the lies emanating from the mouth of the President of the United States, who has misled not only the American public, but the world. Because as much as it's obviously inadvisable to rational people to listen to the president, people have been doing that, and leaders of other countries have been doing that. So the government of Australia, for example, the federal government has dragged its heels in terms of instituting the necessary measures to be a proactive responder to the virus. And I'd like to note at this point that today it's becoming more apparent that China has misled the world on the number of people that have died in the Wuhan territory. So yes, we block Trump supporters, unfortunately, because we understand that there's no point rationalizing with people who are potentially paid trolls in any case. And if not, they're people who are so advanced down that loop of rationalizing criminality to themselves that they can't engage with evidence. That's just a consequence of how the human brain works. We carve out little realities for ourselves at times, and the more divergent people come from reality, the more obvious it becomes that they are in a cult. So that's why we just block. Hey, Pumpkin. Okay, Mummy's doing something. All right, so let's have a quick listen to Yamiche. This is a clip that's only 39 seconds.
If you go into the bathroom, lose that
Ah, damn it. The clip doesn't have her full question, which I really wanted us to hear, because the question is, how is that going to impact, I guess, the release of supplies from the National Strategic Reserve when he downplays the need of certain states for ventilators. So Trump appeared on Sean Hannity and said that he thought Cuomo's request for 20,000 ventilators was an exaggeration. He said hospitals typically need maximum 1,000, so how can he possibly need 20,000? Oh, you couldn't hear the clip. Okay, thank you for letting me know. We'll redo that. Okay, because that's an important clip. Share screen. Yep. I must not neglect to click the share audio button. Okay, so we'll do this again. Sorry about that, everybody. Here we go.
I have two questions. The first is, you've said repeatedly that you think that some of the equipment that governors are requesting, they don't actually need. You said New York might not need 30,000. You said it on Sean Hannity's Fox News. You said that
why don't you people act? Let me ask you.
You said
why don't you act in a little more positive? It's always trying to
get you. My question to you is,
get you. And you know what? That's why nobody trusts the media anymore.
My question to you is, how is that going to impact?
Excuse me, you didn't hear me. That's why you used to work for the Times and now you work for somebody else. Look, let me tell you something. Be nice.
Mr. President, my question is,
don't be threatening. Be nice. Go ahead.
My question is, how is that going to impact how you feel? I have two questions. The first is,
okay,
you've said repeatedly.
So that's a clip. I hope everybody got to hear it. You should have got to hear that this time. My suggestion is that we don't engage with Trump supporters, but that we engage with family members who have any respect for us at all, if we know people personally. So don't deplete our energy or our mental reserves in arguing with people who have gone so far down a contrarian rabbit hole that they're incapable of engaging with evidence. Now, anything we accuse them of, they'll accuse us back of, because their brains are in such adversarial territory. So we don't want that to happen to our own brains. We don't want to get sucked into such adversarial emotions that we can't focus on our goals for each other, for our families, and for our communities. And our goal is to preserve human life and to preserve a biosphere that sustains human life as well. So what can we do? Share resources, share and amplify the testimony of doctors and nurses, because nurses and doctors around the country are frightened for their very lives at this present moment. And they're beyond frightened for their lives and the lives even of their families and their communities. They're frightened that they are being forced into a position where they themselves will become vectors of the disease spread, because without adequate protective equipment, they can more easily be contaminated by other patients and spread that contamination, transmit those viral particles to other people in the hospital system. Most, or many, if not most, many of the deaths resulting from this pandemic will occur as a consequence of overwhelmed hospital systems, where people who need, guys, don't switch the lights on and off, that's not okay. Don't do that, please. People who need hospital treatment for any reason will find it difficult to obtain treatment. Okay. So yes, and let's bring up some evidence today that China is concealing the extent of the deaths in their provinces, that the people have been counting the urns and paying attention to the number of phones that are turned off. And apparently a lot of Chinese phone numbers are now inactive, indicating that the death toll is far higher than that, to a factor of 20 times as high as the number of dead that they've officially admitted to, which means a lot of the calculations of epidemiologists, of scientists trying to provide modeling for our own countries will be wrong. So I don't agree with Trump trying to brand the virus itself as a Chinese virus, but the actions of the totalitarian Chinese government are potentially lethal in the level of deceit. Is everybody okay? This microphone picks up a lot of background noise of my children, so I apologize in advance. Okay, so the chap called Jason Jarrett, you should probably be warned that you will be blocked if you ask irrelevancies. Okay. Other people who have children who are trying to stay at home as much as possible might have children with a little bit of cabin fever as well. So yes, I'm certainly not a major media outlet, but I am striving every day to be a reliable source of information and to share quality resources. No, I don't have a team of fact checkers at my disposal, or a makeup artist, or proper lighting, or any of those things you'd associate with a professional media organization. I have children's drawings in the background. That's an indication as to what I am, an amateur who believes that we all need to use our privilege to the utmost extent. If we can stay home, we're privileged. If we can still obtain food and sustenance and yet minimize risk of disease transmission and stay home, that's a privilege that I'm trying to take full advantage of, to bring people information. I've just got a parade of, you'd think I had 20 children. I've just got a parade back and from. Nor do I answer questions about where I'm from, because it's strictly speaking not relevant and is typically posed only by trolls trying to derail the conversation. Okay, although I am Australian. Sweethearts, I'm going to start deducting stickers if you keep walking back and forth in front of the broadcast. You can stay in that room, that's fine, but don't keep walking back in front. Lordy. All right, so let me share some more resources with you. There's an article I've been reading today that should make all of you very angry, because it's very revealing as to the type of contrarian thinking that informs a lot of the Republican and conservative political leaders who are making life and death decisions for us right now and who are making those decisions poorly. So the article I'm referencing was written by a legal professor called Richard Epstein. All right, I'll bring that up. Okay, that better be the last time, guys. Okay. Okay, so we're going to share this on the screen. Okay. So the reporter is Isaac Chotiner, who spoke with law professor Richard Epstein, whose controversial article on coronavirus circulated in the Trump administration about why he falsely believes that many coronavirus models are wrong and what he thinks should be done about it. So this guy, a professor at the New York University School of Law, decided that there would be maximum 500 dead from the coronavirus. He wrote an article on the Hoover Institution website entitled Coronavirus Perspective. So we're not going to go directly to his article. We're going to go visit this interview transcript. And we're going to have a think about the sort of social Darwinism and libertarian style political thinking that informed this man's articles. Okay. So President Trump, who at one point called the coronavirus pandemic an invisible enemy and said it made him a wartime president, has in recent days questioned its seriousness. Tweeting, "We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself." He said repeatedly that he wanted the country to reopen by the 12th of April, contradicting the advice of most health officials. But yesterday he backed down and extended federal social distancing guidelines for at least another month, so until the end of April. According to the Washington Post, conservatives close to Trump and numerous administration officials have been circulating an article by Richard A. Epstein of the Hoover Institution titled Corona Perspective that plays down the extent of the spread and the threat. So he questioned the WHO's organization's decision to declare the coronavirus outbreak a pandemic and said that public officials have gone overboard and that about 500 people would die from COVID-19 in the US. So obviously the US has significantly passed 500 people already. You're in the early stages of the outbreak and up to over 2,000 people have died now. Yes. So epidemiologists' projections of the death totals range widely, but they tend to be much higher than Epstein's, and Dr. Fauci has estimated there could be between 100,000 and 200,000 deaths in the US. And of course, he's answering a question there about projected coronavirus deaths. But if you have between 100 and 200,000 coronavirus deaths, then you have many more than that of people who are sick and who are filling up hospital wards in the US. And making other people who might urgently need medical care not able to get medical treatment that they need to survive. So that escalates that 200,000 upper range figure into something far more significant than that if the hospital systems collapse, and it appears likely that many hospital systems in America will be pushed to the brink of collapse, if not significantly over the edge. So Epstein also wrote a follow-up article entitled Coronavirus Overreaction. Epstein wrote, progressives think they can run everyone's lives through central planning, but the state of the economy suggests otherwise. Looking at the costs, the public commands have led to a crash in the stock market and may only save a small fraction of the lives that are at risk. So he's arguing that the shutdown suppressive measures are unnecessary and that the worst outcome will occur that we've seen already, the crash of the stock market. And he's blaming that crash because of the suppressive measures, rather than understanding that the suppressive measures are reaction to the virus, that the virus and Trump's ineptitude is causing a stock market crash, that when investors see how Trump is handling it and hear information about the true degree and extent of the virus, contrasting that with Trump saying, no, it's just 15 cases, it's down to 0. Investors noticing the disparity between the truth and Trump's pronouncements go, we're in for a world of pain, because he is downplaying it, which means he's not taking the necessary actions behind the scenes. He's not replenishing America's stockpile. They're guessing that Trump's giving away America's reserves of masks and ventilators, which is what Trump was doing. He was, even as he was telling people to call the virus the China virus, he himself and his Secretary of State, Michael Pompeo, had given away 17.8 tons of coronavirus, personal protective equipment and ventilators to China. Now, I don't endorse calling it the China virus, because that just leads into an uptick of violence against Chinese Americans, or Asian Americans, actually, more broadly speaking. But the Chinese government has tricked your gullible president into giving them supplies necessary for Americans to preserve their American lives in the unfolding and escalation of the crisis within America. And there were cases in Washington state by the time Trump's Secretary of State, Michael Pompeo, was distributing these supplies to China and tweeting about it proudly. So back to Epstein. He's known for his contrarianism. He's already demonstrated his skepticism about the climate emergency. He says there's no compelling evidence of a climate emergency. When scientists are clamoring and depressed and anxious and scared that people disregard them, that people don't listen, that it's so difficult to have leaders who will address the scientific consensus that there is a very immediate problem, that the fires that ravaged Australia, that natural disasters that are increasingly plaguing the entire world are occurring as a consequence of industrialized byproducts from the fossil fuel industry, that we need to address and that we could address, that we have technology that needs government support, that instead of the 26 billion, how much is it? $26 trillion? Let's Google. We want to get this right. How much public subsidy of fossil fuel industries? Let's find the most reputable source we can. $20 billion per year is US direct subsidies to the fossil fuel industry, with 20% allocated to coal and 80% to natural gas and crude oil. European Union subsidies are estimated to total 55 billion euros annually. All right. There's Forbes with an article on it. United States spends 10 times. Oh, you can't see what I see. Sorry. I can fix that. I need to share my sources. I like people to be able to engage with what I'm looking at. Okay, United States spends 10 times more on fossil fuel subsidies and education. Yes, but 5.2 trillion was spent on fossil fuel subsidies at a global level in 2017. So that's a study by the International Monetary Fund written in Forbes online publication. So that represents a $500 billion increase since 2015, when China, the United States, and Russia were the largest subsidizers. So 2015, the United States subsidized fossil fuels with $649 billion. Somebody should divide that number by the amount of jobs relating to fossil fuels, because we typically are subject to so much misinformation that we always overestimate the number of people employed in fossil fuel industries and their associates, and we underestimate the amount of public money that they receive. So this is where we need to increase knowledge. $649 billion given to fossil fuel industries from the United States alone in 2015. Oh, look, the Trump administration tried to rebrand fossil fuels as molecules of US freedom. Fossil fuels account for 85% of all global subsidies. Had nations reduced subsidies in a way to create efficient fossil fuel pricing in 2015, the International Monetary Fund believes that it would have lowered global carbon emissions by 28% and fossil fuel air pollution deaths by 46% and increased government revenue by 3.8% of GDP. We have technologies that we could be pursuing, that we could be offering some of these vast sums of money, but it is just the groove of the status quo that we are so used to, or the governments are so used to giving away so much public money to fossil fuel companies that it's hard for them to change course. And it's hard to elect people who won't do that because so much money that they have from the public is also being used to deceive the public and campaign against any politician who would make a difference. So if we can get Joe Biden into power and pressure him to change course and to fight the huge weaponized disinformation structures of the fossil fuel industries, because they're used to that money. The thrust of human endeavor is to never give up anything that once you've got it. And that's why global warming is such an intractable problem, because once we have our electricity, it's hard to make us give it up. But our hope is that we have renewable energies that can actually generate the type of lifestyles that we've grown accustomed to. It takes the pressure off asking us to give things up, but it doesn't take the pressure off fossil fuel industries needing to be capable of giving things up and our democratic systems to become capable of rejecting campaign money from fossil fuel executives and fossil fuel industries. So let's check in with the comment section. I haven't looked at that for a little while. Someone said hello from France. People are talking about Jones being followed to drinking Kool-Aid and literally dying in the Jonestown cult. I've elaborated on the sources of, oh, for a second I thought you didn't have pants on, honey, because they were beige, but he did have pants. That's good. So yes, people are complaining about the Obama administration doing insufficient things. I think the Trump administration's really clarified the moral difference between the Democratic Party, whatever its failings, whatever its capitulations to the fossil fuel industry. We have people who have more wholeheartedly devoted themselves to advancing corporate rule of America. And then we have, why is my phone ringing? Don't ring for no reason. Oh, it's my sister-in-law. Okay, so no, please don't complain about Obama, because I will block you, just because that is so destructive to the thrust of where we need to go now to bail ourselves out of fascism at this present moment. So I would just, out of an abundance of suspicion that you are an online troll put here to detract from the energy and the enthusiasm we need to propel Trump out of the White House, and a non-criminal, non-destructive person like Joe Biden to put him in the White House. He's sane, accomplished, well-disposed towards people, full of empathy for people who grieve, and has written multiple bills himself to improve the environment and to improve our interactions with the environment. Yep, thank you, Norma Jean. I'm very grateful for your presence as an administrator. I think I saw my friend Brian there as well. Hello, Brian. But yes, Norma Jean points out that the GOP is essentially the party of gas, oil, petroleum. Great reconfiguring of that acronym. Oh, yep, no, I don't think we give Clyde any more chances. He's saying rude things about Joe Biden, and I've got no tolerance or patience for that now. Brian's at work for listening. Okay, so yes, I'm additionally afraid of our beloved healthcare workers who did not adopt the profession of medicine to be self-sacrificial soldiers. Not that soldiers ever volunteer to go into battle with a specific intent of dying in any case, but we have no right to expect our health professionals to unnecessarily expose themselves to this much danger. Danger of not only incurring harm for themselves, but harm for their families, and to feel that exposure to moral harm, to be inadvertently transformed into a vector of viral transmission because they're contaminated and they can't change their protective equipment. So we know that a lot of hospitals have had to relax their standards in relation to how much protective equipment is reused. All right, so I've only got a few minutes left before this will run out of battery. Next time I'll bring a plug. But I might return to that article by that interview with Richard Epstein, just because it's so important to unpack the type of attitude and the type of thinking that is underpinning their attack on us, collectively speaking. And I want to say that people around the world are also threatened by Trump's murderous delay and murderous discounting and deceit of the condition. China has deceived Trump, but Trump has in turn deceived himself and deceived us. So Trump has magnified the deception practiced upon the international community by China by discounting the virus entirely when he still at least knew and had multiple warnings from intelligence agencies, his own intelligence agencies, that this was a serious problem and required serious consideration. Instead, you had Trump downplaying it, hoping against hope that the market would be like him, just somebody keen to make a buck in a 24-hour interval and outpace the law and just keep one step ahead of the next crisis by floating from lie to always keep the truth at bay. Ultimately, you can't spin death, and Trump will try, but what he's just doing is wasting our opportunity to save as many lives as we can. He's wasting our ability to get supplies to doctors and nurses on the front lines of this. Without that help, it's not a question of the death toll escalating. The death toll is massively amplified by health professionals who are active spreaders of the disease because they don't even have similar equipment levels to that of Chinese doctors in China who were working in hazmat suits to deal with victims of the coronavirus, to deal with patients and to help them. Jeff said, thank you for helping us in our fight, which I'm happy to do. Yes, Chris Murphy, he's a Democratic congressman. So he was tweeting about the Trump administration's refusal to order additional supplies and to engage properly with the dynamics and the scope of the problem. So yes, Chris Murphy is a hero. I encourage you to follow him on Twitter and to look back at his tweets from February. People are retweeting them now because they're hard and fast evidence of the Trump administration's willful neglect of the American public, resulting in other governments around the world, such as the Australian government, willfully neglecting its people as well because they were following Trump's example and Trump's public pronouncements. All right. So Epstein has long been one of the most cited legal scholars in the country and is known for his libertarian-minded reading of the Constitution, which envisions a restrained federal government that respects private property. Yep. He's also been known, sorry for the ads, I can't get them out easily. He's also been known to engage with controversial subjects. Actually, you guys, let me know, would you prefer me to just keep that off the screen and I continue to do what I want, which is read significant passages to you? Or do you like having the article back on the screen? Pop quiz, people, what are your feelings about that? I will engage with this one questioner who says, what could have been done to make it better? I'm not sure since it's not that bad yet, but it could be. It is on the path from massive devastation. In New York, in Louisiana, in other states, there's inadequate levels of testing being conducted, which means you can't test who the asymptomatic carriers are. They can only test the sickest people and potentially medical staff. Medical staff need to know when they've been infected so they can go home. With inadequate levels of testing, the crisis is being amplified and compounded. And it's likely you'll see extremely high death tolls in the United States, which will mean people you love. So you won't just know people who've lost their jobs, you will directly know people who've died. There will be loved ones in every family that lose their lives to this disease if Trump continues to not step in and command all manufacturing, many manufacturing companies to instantly start mass manufacturing masks for not only first for healthcare professionals, but secondarily for people, for the public, so that people can wear masks, not even necessarily because they're guaranteed to eliminate risk. They certainly don't eliminate risk. They may reduce risk, but more importantly, they're an important social signifier to alert people to the fact that there's a problem. Because all of the people going to beaches, they're people who watch Netflix rather than the news, and they don't know the scale of the problem. People need a visual aid. Masks worn by people are a visual aid to say there is a pandemic afoot, modify your behavior. That is a potent visual signifier to people to step up. When you can see closures, that's also a signifier. If you leave your house and you see that public spaces that are normally bustling are shut down, then you know, oh, maybe I should stay home and not drive across the country to meet a friend. People need to shelter in place where possible. Emergency workers are still doing their jobs to save us, and we need to honor and support their sacrifice. And I'm not saying that they're sacrificing their life, because they shouldn't be sacrificing their life, and we shouldn't refer to it as a sacrifice of their life, because that leaps to the conclusion end, and we're still in the stage where actions we take and actions we advocate for could have a measurable impact on their lives. We need to advocate for the distribution of personal protective gear to medical professionals. We need to advocate for Trump to step up and manufacture the gowns, the masks, the ventilators that are needed now. And he can command industries to do that, but he hasn't been. Oh, how's the internet going? Frozen? Okay. So Brian saying read post banner with link. Excellent. I can post a banner. Oh, it's all frozen.
from the President of the United States that we could expect between 100,000 and 200.
Hello, look, there's 3 people still there who have been very patiently waiting for me to come back. Yes, we've got the microphone, we've got everything. Okay, thank you about that. I ran out of battery and I was seated in an unusual place. Brian's still there, yay. Nice to see you. If you want to join in, I'll send you a link, Brian, and you can we can chat live if you're feeling up to it. It's just out there, just the invitation. I'm just looking at a tweet from a Trump supporter called Bill Mitchell that says, so if we get less than 200,000 COVID-19 deaths in America, can we all agree that Trump is the greatest president of all time? What now? Oh yeah, you could work. I forgot you did tell me already. Oh, I pulled a Brian in terms of running out of laptop battery. Yes. So yes, no, we won't agree that president's done a great job if deaths are less than 200,000. First of all, it's very unlikely that deaths will be under 200,000 because Dr. Fauci is still giving estimates of direct COVID-19 deaths. And there's going to be a lot of secondary deaths to COVID-19 if America's hospital systems are collapsing, and they are collapsing. It's collapsing when you have doctors and nurses basically begging for their lives, having to use social media to ask for masks to be sent to them, whilst Trump plays a totalitarian dictator, which he is, albeit with some restraints from various American institutions that have partially held up, that he's been withholding supplies from states such as Michigan and New York because he cares even less for the lives of blue voters than he does for the lives of red voters. But I don't think he sent many supplies to Louisiana particularly either. So Florida, he sent supplies to, yes, over and above what they've asked for, but he has personal property in Florida, so he wants people in Florida to be alive to still pay money to go to his golf course. I'm not necessarily sure how to explain Trump's thinking, but I don't really have to. I understand the fundamental direction of his character and his behavior. He's bad and beholden to an adversarial foreign government, and he does things that are against the interests of American citizens and American residents. So Portugal, people may not know, the government there is treating migrants as if they're citizens during this pandemic because they've understood the spread of a disease and the nature of the democratic nature of disease, which is that the health of any of us affects the health of all of us. And if you abandon people to spread the virus in homeless shelters or you leave some people without medical treatment, then you are creating infective pockets that increases the danger to everybody else. So there's often a continuum that politics is pulling us along in one direction or the other. And right-wing people want to say to us, be less compassionate because you have to take care of your family first. And left-wing people will say, how dare you? How dare you say compassion is a negotiable premise? But it is to a degree because you don't want to give away so much that you can't look after your own. So we need to acknowledge the second clause of their sentence. Abandon compassion, take care of your own. So that we can argue in good faith that actually the best way to take care of your own is not to abandon people, to not push so hard on the cult of individualism that you neglect your communities and you allow the fabric of your societies to weaken so that there are bigger cracks. Because ultimately,
You have to put that in the fridge.
it's got
You have
to
to put it in the fridge.
listen to your brother, darling.
I get my next one.
We have to save this enough for 2 people.
Okay.
Got to get some more coins, darling. Was it more expensive than you
It's
thought?
$1.20.
She only brought down enough for one.
Oh, you got to get more coins.
We need $1.20.
Jamie, do you have a $5?
Thank you for muting that person, Kyle. Wow, that's a really new vicious style of trollism that that guy's practicing to say, have you ever been molested? What did it feel like? I'm glad you were so quick off the bat to mute him. My husband's grateful as well, aren't you, honey?
Nope.
Be grateful, darling. No, Daddy's going to try and get another one. He's just looking for coins. Go look for coins with your brother, darling. We've got a vending machine downstairs, so. Oh, thank you. You reported him. That is that is next level, Paul, which is good because it was next level disgustingness. Luckily, I haven't really ever been molested. Otherwise, I would probably be quite triggered. But all I've had is just a French tutor who was a sexual predator for sure, and who was definitely trying to groom my 16-year-old self using the medium of French tutoring lessons. But no. And I've definitely been very agitated in following the case of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, who appears to be a female supervillain, the likes of which we are not very familiar in literature, modern literature. We don't have very many female supervillains in our cultural literature. We have Lady Macbeth, but not everybody reads Shakespeare. And she certainly is next level in having abused her husband and flipped the table on that narrative to present herself to the world as an abuse victim who was able to trade that perception into lucrative modeling contracts and visibility and additional income and profile for herself. So I have been sharing videos about that because they have released tapes that are full audio transcripts of conversations between Amber and Johnny Depp. And it's like listening to a movie, but it's not. It's just actors who clearly pride themselves on their vocabulary and their communication skills, having very elaborate conversations with each other about past events and what's happened and who admits to what. And yes, they're very damning for Amber Heard. So back to COVID though, because the only relationship between COVID and Amber Heard is that feminism can distract us sometimes from the task of acknowledging that women do not deserve to be undilutedly believed, neither do men, that we cannot abandon a need to carefully pass evidence, and just to acknowledge the human nature in our own natures of sometimes buying into emotional narratives that make us too primed to discount certain evidence and accept unquestioningly someone else's opinion or account of what's happened to them. And that leaves us more open to exploitation from sociopaths. So yes, evidence really important. Johnny Depp definitely deserves justice. A judge is allowing him to proceed with a $50 million defamation case against Amber Heard, which is likely to succeed because he has a lot of taped evidence. And there's there's recordings of her giving evidence to a court system that is clearly inconsistent and implausible as well with her version of events. So feminists need to learn. We have, in trying to command people's attention to say, help advance the cause of women. We can't complain about men who say not all men. The not all men argument does have a significant amount of validity to it because we need to reassure men that we're still here to listen to their version of events, to not discount evidence just because it's been given by a man, and to not place our sympathy with women and say, well, it's statistically more likely that a woman is the victim and that a man is the aggressor. We can't do that. That is a very dangerous type of stereotyping that leaves us vulnerable to abuse, like Gone Girl. So yes, I hope Johnny's reputation undergoes sufficient rehabilitation that he can regain the career or some of the things that he lost because of persecution from his former wife. He nearly lost his life a number of times. He had multi-resistant Staphylococcus aureus infections 3 times after being hospitalized after his wife threw a vodka bottle at him, which shattered and chopped off the end of his finger. So he had 3 surgeries and 3 contracted episodes of MRSA. So he's nearly lost everything. I'm sure that helps him appreciate what he has now. And I appreciate the public evidence of his story so that I can resolve as a feminist to make sure I promote the need to not discount all men, to not discount anybody because they're a man, and to not automatically believe any woman. Because it's fear of that, fear of loss of status and privilege and public empathy that has helped some people have too much sympathy for Donald Trump and give him too much credence as a standard bearer for all men, for the injustice that they feared would be perpetrated on men. And Johnny Depp's case is an example of that injustice being visited upon a man, and a warning to us all that the fears of some men were very real. There are no comments at the moment, but that's okay. I guess you're just listening to me. I hope that doesn't mean people have switched off because I'm ranting. I'm going to put in a banner the title of the article that I'm currently going to recommence reading out loud from. Are you happy? Do you want to light a candle and sing to you?
After we make the cake.
Okay.
We can't light candles on anything without anything to light candles on. And eat.
True.
We have to eat.
Why can't I do a banner? Maybe there's not enough. Okay. I'm really trying here. Thank you for your patience, everyone. There we go. Okay. This is the title of the New York interview with Richard A. Epstein that I've been reading out loud from. Okay. So he was asked, what did you want to achieve with your pieces? 2 articles. So Richard Epstein wanted to look at the curve, which seemed to suggest, let's see if you can see what I'm reading. No. Okay, share screen. The contrarian coronavirus theory that informed the Trump administration. Because, of course, I speculate that perhaps Putin and Chinese President Xi informed Trump's thinking, but we can look at a variety of sources that informed his thinking. And one of them is likely to be this source. So I guess you can still hear me. I'll continue to read. Yes, just don't put it too loud, okay, guys? So Epstein argues that the most important thing to look at was the curve, which seemed to suggest that there would be 10 million cases a day during a 10-day or so ban in the middle of July. And to explain why, he said, in relation to all the other things he knows about evolutionary theory, that this just has to be wrong. The better way to have phrased the paper would have been to say that the traditional models, which were used for the last flu season, are much better approximations of what is likely to happen than these rather scary kinds of projections. So that's this legal professor from the New York University downplaying the significance of the virus, saying we should just use models from last year's flu, when the contagion factor for the coronavirus 19 is significantly higher than any other type of flu. And it's also transmitted more readily by asymptomatic patients as well, or asymptomatic cases. People who have the virus, who have a viral load, but who don't have enough viral load to evince symptoms, but they can still transmit the disease. And various studies around the world have now suggested that a significant amount of virus transmission is done by asymptomatic carriers. And that is one very significant difference to the flu. So you wrote last week, in the United States, if the death toll increases at the same rate, the current 67 deaths should translate into about 500 deaths at the end. So that's what he published, that there would be an upper limit of 500 deaths in the US. And obviously people now know that the number is over 2,000, and there is signs of a minor slowdown in the rate of increase in some states, in New York and Michigan. So he regrets saying, "Are you okay, honey? Why is your hat on?
Because I'm going out.
Where are you going, Bob?
Well, I have to work.
Do you want me to get out of here? I'll get out of the dining room. I'll do that. All right, chaps. I'll leave you with that article, but I wanted to share that with you because of that false expertise that's being promulgated by a legal professor who says he knows enough about evolutionary theory to speak out against all of the science on the table about the spread of the coronavirus. And that his word was being used to shape public policy that influences the survival chances of so many millions of Americans. And I just think it's necessary for us to engage with the emotion of anger on occasion so that we can firm our resolve to communicate as much as we can as individuals, to try and pool our energies collectively where they're most efficiently being used as well, so that we retweet popular tweets that have a good message and really help use Twitter to shape some of the news reported on in the mainstream media as well, because we've got to cut through the noise, and we're competing with daily broadcasts from Trump, which are misinformation, very deceptive, minimize the virus still, and pretend that there's a choice between the economy and suppressive measures. But look, honey, I've stopped now.